computer.
The Jewish people live, our Father lives. The evidence that we have a Father in heaven, our evidence is that the Jewish people live against all odds, all logic, all circumstance. So that's what we sing. That's the simple two lines of this song. The Jewish people live, our Father lives. I love that. That simplicity is just wonderful.
Tell us the words and we'll sing while we're waiting for the computer.
Oda vinu, oda vinu, oda vinu, chai. into joy, city of Jerusalem. Fear not, sons of Israel, Messiah has come. Lifting up God's people from singing hallelujah. Dance before the Lord in song, praising God's name. Lion and the lamb shall praise together. Leopard and the wolf will be tame. Break forth into joy, city of Jerusalem. Fear not, sons of Israel, Messiah has come. La 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 la
I don't think that leads into the next song, but I just wrote that. I think it's going to be a big hit.
Oh, how I praise you, Lord, the rock of my salvation. It's you I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops and let my voice proclaim the tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name. Messiah of Israel, Savior is he, restorer of our nation. The hope of David now we see, bringing us salvation. Root of Jesse, Lion of Judah, Judge of Israel. So now we praise you for your joy and love that never fails. Oh, how I praise you, Lord, the rock of my salvation. It's you I praise from shore to shore in all your creation. Let it ring from mountain tops and let my voice proclaim the tender mercies of my Lord. Yeshua is his name.
Great song. Just a great song. Great song to be able to sing that.
El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age you're still the same, by the power of the name. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. We will praise and lift you high, El Shaddai. Through your love and through the Ram, you saved the Son of Abraham. Through the power of your hand, turn the sea into dry land. To the outcast on their knees, you were the God who really sees. And by your might you set your children free. Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age, you're still the same by the power of the name El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. We will raise and lift you high, El Shaddai. Through the years you made it clear that Yeshua's time is near. The world could not see what Messiah ought to be. Knew your word contained the plan. They just could not understand. Your most awesome work was done by the frailty of your Son. El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age, you're still the same by the power of the name El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. We will praise and lift you high, El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Shaddai, El Elyon Adonai. Age to age, you're still the same by the power of the name El Shaddai, El Shaddai, Erkamkana Adonai. We will praise and lift you high, El Shaddai.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat
Good
Shalom.
to see you all here.
Good evening, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Okay, well, you're not gonna keep warm if you don't generate a few more calories. It's good for your weight loss program. Good evening, it's nice to see you tonight, like last week. And yet, in a strange way, unlike last week, we have many, many, many pieces of paper. Pieces of paper which are put in your program so that you can remind yourself, write down in your own personal calendar, and be aware of how much stuff we have going on. In case you are feeling lonely and forlorn, right after Thanksgiving, when everybody feels lonely and forlorn because there's nothing to do, we just sit around our house all day. I don't know, eating more turkey. I don't know what we do. But anyway, there's many, many things. I'm not gonna read each one in detail. I'm gonna read, well, do you want me to read each? I don't think so. Even I will be bored and start falling asleep. In no apparent order. So the game night, which we normally have at the last week in the month, has been shifted to next Saturday night. Yes? I myself, this was new to me, so enjoy. That's next Saturday night, it's on here. On the back, the weekend retreat. The weekend retreat is a time to get away, get up to like a forested area and an area with a lake. You do not have to camp in a tent unless you really, really want to camp in a tent. You may do that. Most of us will be staying in as close to a motel building that they have there as possible, which has indoor plumbing of all kinds. So it's very nice and civilized. That's going to be Martin Luther King weekend, the weekend of January 19th. You need to make your arrangements and start thinking about how you're going to pay, and the information here is at the bottom. A little bit closer to then, Sunday, November 25th, from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. we have a cutoff time because there's nothing I like to do more than go to a meeting in the evening and talk about stuff. I just love meetings where we talk about stuff. But we knew that we all needed to talk about stuff, so you should come anyway, especially if you have questions or concerns about the financial situation, about the insurance situation, about anything having to do with not just business of the synagogue, but also programs and things like that. And we're going to be generating ideas, and it's going to be sort of a low-key time of, we'll give you what we got, and then you're going to give us some of what you have. So that's next Sunday, a week from Sunday night, and it will be short and hopefully sweet. On the back of the blue sheet, which tells you about the Hanukkah party, that's Saturday. I told you, you're not gonna have time to turn around. Might as well just put your tent in the synagogue and just camp here. Don't talk to John and Matt. They work during the day, so, you know, but we do have bathrooms. All right, back to Hanukkah party, Saturday, December 8th at 6 p.m. Usually it's a potluck. Is that what we have this year? Yes, potluck. Or as Connie's dad used to call it, a lucky pot. I don't know why he called it that. It seems silly to me. On the back of the blue sheet is something important. One of the things that we've done for the past, I think it's like 5 or 6 years, has been to get gifts for the holiday season for one family. And this year, I don't know, we got extra special blessing in that we got a big family to get the gifts for. And because it's a little complicated when you know, multiply each child by the number of gifts, there's a very nice sign-up list in the Grand Ballroom, in the Oneg room. Where exactly is it been pinned up in the Oneg room?
Above that table that's between the 2 bathrooms.
Okay, above the table, as you go in the glass doors, it'll be there on the right between the 2 restrooms. And you can sign up for the child or parent of your choice. And this will make sure that 2 kids don't get all the presents, and then the others don't get hardly anything. So that's why we're doing this. We're trying to make it more organized, so we make sure that we cover all the bases, to use a baseball metaphor. It's really a nice thing to participate in, and it reminds us too that you can outgive God. So if you think your life is rough and you don't have enough money to give, or money to have presents or gifts for everybody, guess what? You probably can do more than you think. So, and I think God honors us for when we give to others without any hope of getting a return. I think that's the kind of giving God honors, very much so. I hope that that's the only thing I have to do. Have I left anything out? Yeah, I don't know. He's
Picnic?
recharging his batteries or doing something, or having a reboot of his brain. We're just not sure. He goes into a land of, I don't know where that land is. Where is the picnic? Green, sorry, left out green. Didn't mean to. The picnic. Usually I don't have to ask people to come. They're dying to come. Okay, Sunday, December 2nd. It's at Philippi Park, which is a county park going right up. You go right up Bay Shore Drive here, go up about, say 3 or 4 miles, and it's there on the right. It overlooks the water, but it does not have a beach. So it's not a beachy park. It's a picnic park on hills. It's a very nice wooded area. And, you know, come as you are, bring what you want, and a dish to pass, and there will be fires, hopefully, Lord willing, already started, correct? Isn't that the plan is to have the fires already started? I'm looking.
Yes.
I see nods, so I'm going with those nods. All right, delusional people are here telling me I'm correct. All right. Any support I can get, I know I appreciate it. It's crazy, because I got in my car, and the last time I was in my car, Tuesday, I was really, really hot, and I had super air all the way up, and the recirculating air, because I was hot. Remember that? Remember? Long time ago it was hot, and I couldn't stand to think of any long sleeve clothing on my body, and no long pants, and you know, presto changeo. Here we have like normal fall weather. To me, this is normal fall weather. My sister-in-law, John's sister, she's not young as she used to be, and she said she lives northwest of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and she said she was out driving, doing her errands, as she does, and she got stuck on the side of the road. I basically couldn't move, pulled her car off to the side because she couldn't move her car up the incline, and walked home for 2 miles in the snow. That was our sister Sylvia, yes, and so I have not said anything snarky to her on Facebook or anything, because I wouldn't want someone saying something snarky to me if I had to. Of course, I wouldn't have walked that far. I would just, whined a lot about it, went to somebody's home or something. I don't know where she was, but I will say that our nephew from another parent said, were you going uphill both ways, backwards? And she did not respond to that. So I think we should be thankful that God brings us relief from heat all the time in our lives, that he looks down on his people and he says, what do they need now? Not what do they want, what do they need now? And of course, we have to always remember that God presents us with things many times that we need rather than what we've chosen, because he knows how it's gonna all work out in the end. I think that's a good thing to do. Thank you for coming tonight. Shabbat Shalom.
As we begin our service this evening, please turn to pages 10 to 13, Magen Avot. It reminds us, as Dr. Patrice has already mentioned along the way, that our God does watch over us. In fact, He's the shield of our ancestors. He has watched over us from the days of our ancestors right on through to now, and we acknowledge that now. As we turn to pages 10 to 13, Jenny leads, and then we respond on page 13.
Magadesh HaShabbat Umbarek Shevi Umaniach B'Kedusha Le'amedu Shnei Honei Zecher L'Maseh Bereshit L'Maseh Bereshit. With his word, he was a shield to our fathers. By his decree, he will give life to the dead. The holy God, with whom no other can compare, who provides his people rest each holy Sabbath day. In reverence and awe, we will serve him daily, and every day we will thank him suitably. He is the God to whom all thanks are due, the Lord of peace who makes the Sabbath special. He blesses the seventh day for his people, to give them joy and remind them of creation.
He makes Shabbat special, and as we kindle the lights, we are reminded of exactly that, because Shabbat stands as a permanent guarantee of the permanent relationship we have with our God. He is our God, and we are his people forever.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotov v'tzivanu ladnik nershel Shabbat. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has set us apart by your commandments and commanded us to light the candles for the Sabbath. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu v'mitzvotov v'tzivanu lahoyoter legoyim v'natan lanu Yeshua Meshikenu ha'olam olam. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who has sanctified us by your commandments and commanded us to be a light for the nations and gave us Yeshua, our Messiah, the light of the world. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
We realize that he's not just a shield for our ancestors, but he is for us. And so we have the opportunity to respond now, each of us personally, with our Tehillah Tabrit Kadashah portion on pages 136 and 137 at the top, as each of us now praises the Lord and rejoices in God our Savior, because he's been mindful of us. The text begins, Ramah Nafsheh, et Adonai Ruchi, V'tagel Ruchi Belohei Yeshi. And we respond together.
My soul praises the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has been mindful of the humble state of his servant. From now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is his name. His mercy extends to those who fear him, from generation to generation. He has performed mighty deeds with his arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He has brought down rulers from their thrones, but has lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, but he has sent the rich away empty. He has helped his servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants forever, even as he said to our fathers.
The clearest indication that God reaches out to his people, at least in most recent days, and by recent I'm not talking about the last 2,000 years, is that he actually stepped into our history in order to bring us to himself. And having done so, he now sits in the place of ultimate authority, which is where we find him as we now respond. On pages 40 and 41 with Elohim Asher. Ultimately, he's the one who will bring in the Messianic age, the time of eternal Shabbat.
Elohim Asher Diber, Mikadem Pamim Rabo, Ubirachim Rabo, Tel Ha'avot, Beyad HaNevi'im, Diber Aleinu Behacharit, Hayamim Ha'ele, Beyad HaBein Asher, Samle Yoresh Tov, Yado, Gamasa et Ha'olamim, Uzohar Kevodo, Veselem Asmuto, Venoseo Bekaro, Rahagura, Ulachal She'asa, Tibur Katayim, Yashav Limim, Hadullah. In the past, God spoke to our fathers through the prophets at many times in various ways. But now, at the end of the days, he has spoken to us by the Messiah, his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, and through whom he made the universe. The Son is the full radiance of God's glory, and the flawless manifestation of his reality. He sustains all things by his powerful word. After he made atonement for sins, he sat down in the place of authority, beside the majesty in heaven. True and firm, established and lasting, bright and faithful, loved and treasured, desired and pleasant, feared and mighty, ordered and acceptable, good and beautiful is this word to us forever and ever.
In keeping with that last paragraph, the theme continues as we respond to our great God because of all that he's done for us. And in this particular version of Sephardi Kaddish, pages 156 and 157, we're reminded that we anticipate the return of the one who sits on the throne, as we just now acknowledged, and we ask that that it will happen soon, even in our days. Pages 156 and 157, again, Jenny leads, and then we respond in the appropriate places.
יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, ועמד יברח חירותי, וימלך מלכותי ויצמח פורקני ויקרב משיחי, בחייכנו ויומכנו בחיי לכל בית ישראל, ויגלו בזמן קריב ימלאו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי יתברך. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ולעולמי יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם, ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודשא ברינו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה, וישרתה תושבחתה, ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו amen. Glorified and sanctified be his great name in the world, which is created according to his will. May he bring about the reign of his kingdom and cause his salvation to flourish, and bring near his Messiah in your lifetime and in your days, and in the life of all the house of Israel speedily, yes, soon. And let us say, Amen. May his great name be blessed forever and forever, eternally. Blessed and praised, glorified and exalted, extolled and honored, adored and lauded be the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, who is high above, far above all blessings and hymns, and praises and consolations which are spoken in the world, and say, Amen. May there be great peace from heaven, and good life for us and for all Israel, and say, Amen. He who makes peace in the heavenly realms, may he make peace for us and for all Israel. And let us all say, Amen.
Our reading portion for tonight is just paragraph 6, pages 76 to 79. I ask that you join us in standing, facing Jerusalem, the direction of the ark, as we continue to thank our God that he is, as the text says, our ancestors' God for all eternity. He is our rock, our shield that saves through every generation, including ours, which is why we place our lives into his tender care. Utilize these words to respond in gratitude, in praising our God. All the living shall thank you and praise your name faithfully, because you are the God of salvation and deliverance, as in the past, so also for us in the present. Which is why we say, Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha ucha lehaltot. Blessed are you, O Lord, whose name is good, and to whom it is pleasant to give thanks. You may be seated. As we reflect on the nature of this wonderful God in whose hands are our lives on a daily basis, we first of all, with Moses and the people of Israel, as the text says, praise our exalted God. Blessed is he who is to be blessed. Moses and the people of Israel sang a song too with great joy. As they all said, so now we all say, page 45.
Who is like you, O Lord among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osek velei.
Mi kamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osei velei.
To the question we've just asked, who is like the Lord our God among the gods? We now answer, truly there is none like you, O Lord, among the gods. Pages 88 and 89, Ein Kamoka is that answer.
Ein kamocha ve'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kamasecha. Malchutcha melchut kol olamim, u'memshaltecha b'kol dor v'dor. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Adonai hoz le'emo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom. Together? There is none like you among the gods, my Lord, and there is nothing that compares to your deeds. Your kingdom is a kingdom that endures for all eternity, and your sovereignty extends throughout all generations. The Lord reigns, the Lord has reigned, the Lord shall reign throughout eternity. The Lord will bless his people with peace.
As he reigns, he needs to reign throughout each and every one of our lives daily. And that is exactly what we now affirm as we stand facing Jerusalem yet again. Respond on pages 34 to 39 with the Shema.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Hashem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Vayed. Ve'ata et Adonai Elohecha, Le'kol avavcha, Le'kol nafshecha, Le'kol edecha. Ve'hayu hadarim ha'eleh, Asher Anochi b'tzavta hayom alevecha. Ve'shiratam levanecha, ve'dibarta bam, ve'shivtecha bebetecha, u'v'techa v'derech, u'shaptecha u'necha, u'shatam le'ot al yedecha, ve'hayu atotafot beinecha, u'shaptam al mezuzot beitecha, u'visharecha.
Hear, O Israel,
eternal.
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your life, and with all your strength. These commandments that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road, when you lie down and when you get up. Tie them as reminders on your hands and bind them on your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and on your gates.
What we have just acknowledged, the world itself will acknowledge as well. On pages 88 and 89, we look forward to that time. Even so it talks of that time, when the 12 will go forth from Mount Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem.
Vayehi ben Zoharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kum Adonai, Vayafutzu Levacha, Vayanusu, Mizanecha, Mipanecha.
Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Udavar Adonai Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, B'kedushato.
And it came to pass, whenever the ark went forward, Moses would say, Arise, O Lord, and let your enemies be scattered. May those who hate you flee from before you. For from Zion shall go forth the Torah, and the word of the Lord out of Jerusalem. Blessed be he who in holiness gave the Torah to his people Israel.
It's a great gift we have received, and to that gift we now respond in gratitude on page 133.
The ark now unveils its treasure.
To our eyes and minds and hearts.
Inside, the scroll of Torah stands.
It
Stands there with all its richness and wisdom.
As we listen, voices speak, voices of our ancestors.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Joseph, and Moses.
O God, they bring us your instructions for us.
Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, and Miriam speak to us as well.
O God, they move us to respond to your promises to us.
We are grateful for your words, the words of Torah.
Hear, O Israel, the Lord calls.
We will hear your words that we may learn them, love them, live them.
What does the Lord require of you? To fear him, love him, serve him, and walk in all his ways.
All the Lord has said, we will do.
Misha Barak Avotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov. He who blessed our fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. May he bless Matthew. May he bless Rabbi John. May he bless Virginia. And may he bless Carrie. who have come up to honor God and the Torah. May the Holy One bless them and their families and send blessing and prosperity on all the work of their hands. Baruch et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMorach Olam Vaed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten ha'Torah.
Amen.
Bless the Lord who is blessed.
Bless the Lord who is blessed forever and ever.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who chose us from all peoples and gave to us the Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
Vayetzei Yaakov miber Shava, vayelech Harana, vayifka b'machom vayalen sham kiva hashemesh, vayachach me'avnei hamachom vayasem ra'ashotayv, vayishkav b'machom chahu. Please be seated. And Jacob went out from Beersheba, and he traveled toward Haran. Because the sun had set, when he found a place, he stayed there overnight. And he took one of the rocks of that place, and he set it under his head, and he laid himself down in that place to sleep. These are not very pleasant circumstances. Jacob is laying in the dirt with a stone for his pillow after leaving his family to flee from his brother. Family drama. With the Thursday holiday coming up, I suggest we all prepare for it. And yeah. I'm not sure what he was carrying on him. I'm not sure how common money was. I don't think he had any cattle or servants with him, and he's going to get a job from Uncle Lavan and also court a lady there. Lots of hardship follows that. 7 years, and again another 7 years of wages being adjusted, what we might call exploitation. Lots of hardship. And Jacob, at the end of his life, meets with Pharaoh and says, "Few and evil have been the years of my life." Lots of hardship. And I imagine while he's laying down under all the stars of heaven, and God has not appeared yet, I think in his shoes I would be complaining a lot. That's what I do. I complain a lot. If you haven't heard it, good. But it's unthinkable not having the Jewish people and everything that means over thousands of years. And that's the impact that he had in his life. And I think if he were to see that and then compare the hardships that he would have to deal with in his life, he would say, as I would say, that sounds like a bargain. And I think that bit of perspective makes a lot of difference when we're just traveling around in our lives and trying to make ends meet and dealing with just a bunch of unpleasant stuff. It's easier when you know who you're doing it for, and you never know the impact that it might have. So I would encourage us all, especially myself, to keep some perspective, to remember that what we do has purpose, and to change that complaint into thankfulness. And that I apply to myself. I don't have anyone else but me in mind for that, but if it helps you, I'm glad. So Shabbat Shalom and happy Thanksgiving.
Shabbat Shalom.
Genesis 28:12-19. He, meaning Jacob, dreamt that there before him was a ladder resting on the ground with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of Adonai were going up and then down on it. Then suddenly Adonai was standing there next to him, and he said, I am Adonai, the God of Abraham, your grandfather, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you are lying, I will give to you and your descendants. Your descendants will be as numerous as the grains of dust on the earth. You will expand to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. By you and your descendants, all the families of the earth will be blessed. Look, I am with you. I will guard you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land, because I won't leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob woke from his sleep and said, truly, Adonai is in this place. I didn't know it. Then he became afraid and said, this place is fearsome. This has to be the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Jacob got up early in the morning, took the stone he put under his head, set it up as a standing stone, poured olive oil on its top, and named the place Beit-El, meaning house of God. But the town had originally been called Luz.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen.
Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who gave us the Torah of truth and life everlasting, planted in our midst. Blessed are you, Lord, giver of the Torah.
These words certainly shook up Jacob's life. Actually, they reassured him. As did the words that were given to us of old from Mount Sinai, which we now acknowledge as our ancestors did. It shook up their lives and reassured them. And we make that acknowledgement as our ancestors did, as we now stand more or less in their footsteps. And we too, on pages 98 and 99, respond with, no, that's not the right pages, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I got it right. 98 and 99 with Vazot HaTorah. These are the words that God has given to us through the hand of Moses. If you need the transliteration, it's page 95.
Vezot
HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai beyad Moshe.
This is the Torah which Moses placed before the children of Israel. It is in accord with the Lord's command by the hand of Moses.
You may be seated. Pages 94 to 97.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bahar min vehim tovim, דבריהם הנאמרים באמת. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בתורה ובמשה עבדו ובישראל עמו ובנביאי האמת בצדק. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who selected good prophets, delighting in their words which were spoken truthfully. Blessed are you, O Lord, who chose the Torah, your servant Moses, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness.
Shabbat Shalom. Be reading from the prophet Hosea, chapter 14, verses 5 through 10. I will heal their disloyalty. I will love them freely, for my anger has turned from him. I will be like dew to Israel. He will blossom like a lily and strike roots like the Lebanon. His branches will spread out. His beauty will be like an olive tree, and his fragrance like the Lebanon. Again, they will live in his shade and raise grain. They will blossom like a vine, and its aroma will be like the wine of the Lebanon. Ephraim will say, what have I to do any more with idols? And I answer and affirm him. I am like a fresh green cypress tree. Your fruitfulness comes from me. Let the wise understand these things, and let the discerning know them. For the ways of Adonai are straight, and the righteous walk in them, but in them sinners stumble.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzur kol haolamim tzadik b'kol hadarot ha'el ha'ne'eman ha'omer ve'oseh hamdaber u'mekayem shekol devarav emet v'tzedek Ne'eman atahu Adonai Eloheinu v'ne'emanim devarecha v'devarecha midvarecha acholo yeshuv rekam ki el melech ne'eman v'rachaman atah Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'ne'eman B'kol devarav. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, ruler of the universe, rock of all ages, righteous throughout all generations. You are the faithful God, promising and then performing, first speaking, then fulfilling. For all your words are true and righteous. Faithful are you, O Lord our God, and faithful are your words. For no word of yours shall remain unfulfilled. You are a faithful and merciful God and King. Blessed are you, O Lord God, who are faithful in fulfilling your words. Have mercy on Zion. It is the fountain of our life, and very soon deliver her who grieves deeply. Blessed are you, O Lord, who makes Zion rejoice with her children.
And those children now respond.
Make us joyful, O Lord our God, with the prophet Elijah, your servant, and with the kingdom of the house of David, your anointed. May Elisha come soon and bring joy to our hearts. Allow no strangers to sit on David's throne or inherit his glory. For by your holy name you swore to him that his light would not be quenched forever. Blessed are you, O Lord, the shield of David. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen David.
Words that are intended to impact our lives, which is why we now respond. At the bottom of those pages, 96 and 97, renew our days as of old. Let this tree of life sink its roots deep in our lives.
It's time. A tree of life it is to those who take hold of it, and happy are those who support it. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Turn us, Lord, to you, and let us return. Renew our days as of old.
Turn us, Lord, to you. In a sense, that's exactly what we do right now. As we stand in his presence, turn to him, and we respond. On pages 98 and 99 with Ufnu Koyomar.
Ufnu Koyomar Shuva, Adonai Rivavot Alfei Yisrael. When the ark rested, Moses would say, Return, O Lord, to the myriads of Israel's families. Arise, O Lord, to your resting place, you and your mighty ark. Clothe your priests with righteousness. May those who have experienced your faithful love shout for joy. For the sake of your servant David, don't delay the return of your Messiah. Ba'avor David Abdecha, al teshev pnei mishachecha. Ki lakach tov natati lachem, torati al ta'azovu. I give you good instruction. Do not forsake my Torah.
And as we greet one another here on the Bema, we invite you to greet one another out there. It's flu season. Don't shake hands. Do something else.
What is this? Yeah, I'm going to shake hands, whatever.
Done.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay. Shabbat school is excused. You're invited to sit down. You know, these days it seems as though there might just be a conspiracy against hope. It's hard to look on the bright side of life with all the events of the past 3 weeks alone that constantly tell us that we are in danger of destruction, when we've seen that a few people can put an end to life as we know it. It's reasonable. Well, let's change that. Is it reasonable to still have hope in the face of all this? Or is it only logical to resort to despair, disbelief, fear, and cynicism? Being aware of the overwhelming and irrepressible evil in our world can often cause people to lose hope and to lose faith in a God who cares. We only need to look back some 80 years ago, as we did in fact last weekend, to Kristallnacht and to the Holocaust. We only need to look back that far to find an example of an evil so great that many lost all hope and all faith. And yet, even the Holocaust, through the Holocaust, faith and hope survived. Listen to the words of a young girl who wrote in her diary. It is utterly impossible for me to build my life on a foundation of chaos, suffering, and death. I see the world being slowly transformed into a wilderness. I hear the approaching thunder that one day will destroy us too. I feel the suffering of millions, and yet when I look up at the sky, I somehow feel that this cruelty too shall end, that peace and tranquility will return once more, end quote. So wrote the young Jewish girl Anne Frank during the height of the Holocaust. There was another who went through the camps himself, Viktor Frankl, as he wrote in Search for Meaning. He pointed out the reason why those who survived did survive in most cases. Namely, it was those who had hope who were able to pull through. And then there were those men and women marching out of the Warsaw Ghetto on their way to the death camps, who recited the 12th article of Maimonides' affirmation, the 13 principles of faith. They said, Me'amim be'emunah shlema. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah. From such a horrific episode in our history, we see that hope can survive even in the worst of conditions. Now, I'm not going to get into all the questions related to what those events mean to faith and hope in God. I did so in an article many years ago in a journal called Judaism, and you can get that article if you're interested, called God After the Holocaust. But I want to move to today. Today, while we do struggle to understand the persecution our ancestors went through, each of us must individually grapple with the question of how we can hope when all seems hopeless. Some have suggested that to keep our faith and our hope alive, we must modify what it is that we believe in. A number of years ago, Harold Kushner, the rabbi, wrote a book called When Bad Things Happen to Good People. He was prompted to do so by the death of his own son. Rabbi Kushner's answer to the question of why bad things happen to good people is that while God is good, he is not all-powerful. So Rabbi Kushner remakes God with limitations to make faith easier and tragedy more bearable. But let me suggest that if our God is not all-powerful, then what reason do we have to hope? Because then evil can ultimately conquer. And if our hope is irrelevant, then why have faith? After all, faith in God has traditionally been the source of strength that enables people who are surrounded by adversity to overcome it. Now look, the faith that we're talking about is not just a belief that God exists. More than that, it's a personal trust in God, a God who is active in history. He's a God who can not only part the sea of reeds, he is in fact a God who knows us personally and cares for us individually. And for those who will take some of the yeshiva courses, we talked about that kind of God being presented in the Gospel of Matthew and Mark just last night. So for those in the classes, a review. For those not in the classes, a commercial. Take the classes. If you hadn't figured that's what the commercial was. A God who knows us personally and cares for us individually. Not just a God, but our God. A God who has said to us, Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the plans that I have for you, plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a future and a hope." In fact, our liturgy has at its heart this very same hope and trust in a supremely powerful God who loves and who cares. It's epitomized perhaps in the words of Adon Olam. You know, we sing it from time to time. "Then in his hand myself I lay, and trusting sleep, to wake with cheer. My life I give into his care. The Lord does guard, I have no fear." And as we responded with Kaddish, it reflects the same kind of thing in times of difficulty, because Kaddish is often, as you recall, said during times of difficulty. In times of difficulty, we have a God who does guard, therefore we need not have fear. And Judaism reminds us regularly that faith is essential for a real relationship with God. So at the heart of the rabbinic literature, the Talmud says, and I quote, 7 qualities avail before the throne of glory: faith, righteousness, justice, loving kindness, mercy, truth, and peace. These represent the crowning virtues, and the first place is assigned to faith, the principle upon which the whole relationship of man with God ultimately rests, end quote. The Shema itself, which we affirmed a little earlier, is an acknowledgement of God's power, as well as a response of personal trust in our powerful God. Moreover, when we study the heroes and heroines of the scriptures, we see that God did not abandon them during times of great difficulty, even when their circumstances seemed to indicate his absence. Jacob, Joseph, and Job. Oh, 3 J's. Sounds almost like a music group. Anyhow, Jacob, Joseph, and Job all had their hope in God tested in various difficult circumstances, and all were able to continue to put their faith into action. Prior to the text that was read tonight from last week's Parsha, near the end, the text reads, "So Esau hated Jacob because of what he had done to him. He said to himself, 'My father will soon be gone, and then I will kill Jacob.'" And then, as you heard read first by Matt, and then by Virginia, "So Jacob left Beersheba and journeyed toward Haran." Look, Matt already hinted at this, the hopelessness and difficulty of Jacob's situation. His father was dead. He would never again see his mother. His brother had murder on his heart. His murder. And yet the text says Jacob departed from Beersheba. Now, for the purpose of this story, it would have been sufficient to say merely, he went to Haran. Would have been far simpler. Therefore, the sages, the rabbis of old, infer that Jacob's departure from Beersheba had a significance of its own. And in fact, the great rabbinic commentator of the 11th century, Rashi, suggests that what the text is telling us is what you have here is a righteous person's departure. A righteous person's departure. And so in verse 11, we go on to read that he arrived in that place. Now that place, or this place, was Mount Moriah, the site where Abraham bound Isaac on the altar and where the temple would later stand, as our traditions put the text together. Therefore, the sages interpret the term Yifgah, often translated came upon, which usually does mean encountered. They interpret it to have the less common meaning, namely prayed. So, as the text may be clearly indicating to us, Jacob's primary encounter was not with a geographical location, but with God himself. Oh, and by the way, one of the more prominent names that our sages of old had for God is Hamakom, the place, just as you have in this text. So, Vayifgah Hamakom, he encountered the place. He encountered God. Now, since the verse states that this took place just before he retired for the night, the rabbis of old credit Jacob, and I love the way they put this together, credit Jacob with instituting what's called the evening prayer, Arvit. It's an indication of his hope and his trust. And so we read in verse 12, he lay down to sleep and dreamed that a staircase reached from earth to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down on it. I think I've said this before, others have as well. Notice they didn't come down and go up, they went up and came down. The angels were already accompanying him. At the top of the stairs stood the Lord. "I am the Lord," he said, "the God of Abraham and of your father Isaac. The ground you are lying on is yours. I will give it to you and to your descendants. I will bring you back safely to this land." Now notice what he said next. "I will be with you constantly." And then he goes on to say, until I finish giving you all that I'm promising. If you haven't already realized what that is the definition of, it's the definition of the name by which God introduced himself to Moses at the burning bush. Not I am who I am, which is the way it's often translated, but I'm the God who will go with you constantly, with the implication as it is here, until I have finished giving you all I am promising. Oh, by the way, he isn't finished giving us all that he's promising, so he's still going with us. It was God's promises then, as the text tells us, that enabled Jacob to persevere through years of an experience with Lavan, the Aramean. Remember we talked about this last week? The name for deceiver is not Jacob. The name for the deceiver is Aramean. It's the term for deceiver. And Lavan was the Aramean, the deceiver. Anyhow, so God's promises enabled him to persevere through those years with this deceiver, plus the years of infertility of Rachel, and then to return to fulfill his commitment, as verse 22 goes on to say in the text. And this memorial pillar shall become a place for worship, and I will give you back 1/10 of everything you give me. That hope that Jacob had settled his heart and secured his path. Joseph is another person who spent a great deal of his life in very difficult circumstances. You remember the story. It's a story we're going to get into very shortly. He got caught up in the middle of jealousies and rivalries. So his early years consisted of alienation from his brothers, physical mistreatment, and, if you would have it, a virtual kidnapping and near murder arranged by those brothers of his. At that point in the story, his story takes a turn. It would appear for the better as Joseph rises in the Egyptian ranks. But soon the wife of Joseph's supervisor attempts to seduce him. And when Joseph maintains his integrity and refuses her, she turns on him. And he's put in prison. Not because of any wrong on his part, but because of his integrity. Joseph's experiences should have destroyed him. Instead, he continued to hope and to trust in God. And so he was able to tell his brothers many years later, at the end of the book of Genesis, chapter 50, and as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good. Joseph's trust shows that faith in God can help us to face and, in fact, overcome adversity. But perhaps the supreme example of faith through suffering is still Job. And in Job's case, it seems that initially his faith is precisely what got him into trouble in the first place. You see, the biblical account pictures Job's calamities as arising from Hasatan, Satan's challenge to God to test Job's faith. So attacked by Satan, and actually by his own friends as well, Job is ultimately affirmed by God. Interestingly, one of the book's striking moments is when God reminds Job who the creator and the continuer of the universe is. And in response to this display of God's power, Joseph, too many J's in there. John. Job reclaims his uncompromising faith. He rejects the possibility that God is absent or limited. Remember his words earlier in the book of Job, in the heart of it all, as he's going through it all. Even though the Lord should slay me, still I will hope in him. And that hope is vindicated. Despite the circumstances, despite the doubts and the discouragements thrown our way, God wants us to maintain our hope and to express our trust in him. A young boy was sitting on a park bench. He was happily humming and singing softly to himself. Soon along came a young man who had recently completed his degree at a local university. At this point, the young man, the graduate, feeling very enlightened and very eager to show his brilliance. So he asked this young boy, why he was so happy. The boy asked with a right laugh. Do you have any idea of what God is able to do? I just read that God opened up the Sea of Reeds and let the whole nation of Israel right through the middle. He must have been going to one of our Shabbat school classes. The new graduate laughed lightly, sat down next to the boy, and began to try to open his eyes to the reality of the miracles of the Bible. He said, "You know, these can all be easily explained. Modern scholarship has shown that the Sea of Reeds in that area was only 10 inches deep at the time. So it was no real problem for the Israelites to just wade across." At this, the boy was stumped. The man was content that he had enlightened the poor, naive young person to the finer points of scientific insight, and so he turned to leave. But before he had taken even 2 steps, the boy shouted, "Wow! God is even greater than I thought. Not only did he lead the whole nation of Israel through the Sea of Reeds, he topped it off by drowning the whole Egyptian army in just 10 inches of water." As he did for those people who crossed that Sea of Reeds, so God asks us to trust him, even when circumstances seem hopeless. Questions like, why is God allowing this to happen? And where is God during this crisis? These are not new, friends. People have been wrestling with them for ages. So it raises the question for us, why are these accounts of faith and hope recorded in the scriptures for us? Let me suggest, so that we can remember that our God parted the Sea of Reeds, that he fed us with manna in the wilderness, and he brought us into the promised land. They're there so that we can be reminded that our God is in fact all-powerful, and he is caring and loving as well. And this is striking. And he shares in our suffering. When Moses went back to his second job interview, Exodus 6, verses 5 through 7, God said, "I have seen their suffering, I have heard their cries, in effect I have mourned along with them." Because God is present, because God is a feeling and caring God as well as a God who knows all things, he suffers with each victim of grief. He mourns with every person who loses a loved one, and suffers with everyone who is sick, and grieves with us in our despair and discouragement. Because of this, even if there were no completely satisfying answers for difficulties and for evil, there is a reason for hope. Knowing that God suffers with those who suffer gives us a reason to trust him and to love him even more. He knows what we are going through, and he has not abandoned us. Remember the name from the bush? I will go with them wherever they go, constantly and through all circumstances. And in fact, the Torah virtually closes on those words. It's in chapter 31, not chapter 34, but it's close enough to the end. Don't be afraid. I will never leave you, nor will I abandon you. And that, too, is the encouragement from the Haftarah portion for this week, part of which was read. The God who sees, too, even those who sometimes wander off, and brings them back to himself. However, let me suggest that the greatest evidence we have of God's continual presence and strength is, in fact, our Messiah, who bore on himself our griefs and our burdens. Not on himself, in himself. Those who have been faithful throughout our history have rooted their trust in the expected final vindication of faith in the Messianic age, when evil and turmoil will be dealt a crushing blow. So to repeat the words of those leaving the Warsaw Ghetto into the death camps, Me'amim be'emna shlema. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Messiah. So for thousands of years, our people have trusted that God would in fact send his promised Messiah to a grieving and suffering planet. Through every difficulty, we have traditionally looked for the Messiah to destroy evil and to vindicate our faith in God. It is this hope that has nourished our faith. It is this hope that we will express yet again in a few short minutes when we rise for the Elena. It's the time when the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. We understand it to be the time of the kingdom of David's greater son. When all evil, as the Elena reminds us, will be wiped away. In fact, among his many titles, among the Messiah's many titles, is the suffering servant. And again, back to last night's class, we were talking about this last night. If you weren't there, I'm sorry you missed it. And you know what I'm going to say next. Come to class. Anyhow, one of his major titles is suffering servant. It's as if to imply that the Messiah himself knows all too well the meaning of pain and suffering. So Isaiah wrote of him, "Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he personally carried," which is exactly what we need to hear and understand. Yeshua knew suffering from firsthand experience, and he expressed compassion and solidarity for and solidarity with people who suffer. In a classic text in Matthew chapter 9, he saw the crowds, and he saw what? How downtrodden and hopeless they appeared to be, and he felt compassion on them. This is the time when he was healing them as well. Nobody's life is free from pain or anxiety. But then, should we give in to despair or fear and cynicism? If these things, anxiety and pain, characterize our lives? Or should we refashion God into an image that seems more palatable? Or perhaps, can we allow Yeshua, the promised Messiah, to give hope and to bring healing? The 18th century poet, Moshe Ephraim Kuh, must have been a Hindu. Come on, wake up, people. Moshe Ephraim said, "We trust a star to guide our way when on the open sea. Why trust we not the Lord of stars on earth, our guide to be?" There's no reason to lose hope. Remember, faith and hope that survive adversity are stronger than faith and hope that have not been tested. I was reminded of this when one of our friends and family members here at the synagogue, Doreen German, posted this a little more than 2 weeks ago. When you're in a dark place, you sometimes tend to think you've been buried. Perhaps you've just been planted. So gloom. So activate your hope and trust in God who said, in the text I quoted earlier, from Jeremiah. Jeremiah was speaking to people getting ready to be carried off into captivity. And God speaks through Jeremiah in those circumstances, and he says, "For I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Against all hope, we do have hope. Amen. Take the next minute or so for time of reflection and quiet. We rise now and join in the Elenu, which expresses our anticipation, our hope, now our confidence that in the end, God will put all things right when the world will be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty. The time of the kingdom of David's greater son, pages 102 to 107. But it's also the time when every knee will bow, as we do, or have the opportunity to, going through the course of the Iliad. Pages 102 to 107.
Aleinu l'chabeach Adon hakol, lateit gedula yotzer bereshit, shelo asanu k'mayim haratzot, velo samanu k'mishtachot ha'adama, shelo sam kelkeinu kahem, velo aleinu k'kahamonam, ve'anachnu korim u'mishtachalim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlakim hakadosh baruch hu shehu notei shamayim v'yoser haaretz u'moshav yakaro v'shamayim imahal u'shtinatu zo V'gave meroni, hu Eloheinu Elyon, emet malkeinu v'chesulato, kakatu b'torato, v'yadata hayom, v'hashevota, el elohecha ki Adonai, hu Elohim, v'shamayim v'ma'al, Ve'al ha'aretz mitachat eino. It is incumbent upon us to praise the Master of all, to exalt the Creator of the world, for He has made us distinct from the nations and unique among the families of the earth. Our destiny is not like theirs, our calling is our task. We bow down and acknowledge before the King of Kings that there is none like Him. For He stretched forth the heavens like a tent, and established the earth. Truly there is none like our Lord and King. As the Torah says, you shall know this day and reflect in your heart that it is the Lord who is God in the heavens above, and on the earth beneath there is none else. We hope, O Lord our God, to soon behold your majestic glory, when all abominations shall be removed, and all false gods shall be at an end. Then shall the world be perfected under the rule of the Lord Almighty, and all mankind shall call upon your name. For to you every knee must bow, and every tongue declare that you are God. Reign over us soon and forever. May the kingdom of David's greater son be established forever. For then shall the words be fulfilled. The Lord shall be king forever, and the Lord shall be king over all the earth. On that day the Lord shall be one, and His name one. Kakatu b'toratecha, Adonai yimlo le'olam vayed, v'ne'emar, v'haya Adonai, v'melech al kol haaretz, v'yom hahu, v'yom hahu,
You may be seated. Not so fast, Gary.
Oh, darn it.
I saw
I was
it.
this close.
Yes, he was. Gary, a warning. Don't believe the clock
What clock?
on the wall.
Oh,
I think it stopped just about the time I started speaking, or maybe it's when you were all greeting one another. You blew out the circuits.
right. 11:45?